School shootings are truly horrific. Please proceed with caution, as these stories are by no means for the faint of heart. If you're still here though, it's time to get comfortable and let the darkness take control. Number 1. My wife was a senior at St. Puys X High School in Ottawa. It was a Catholic school with nuns and brothers for teachers. A guy she knew walked in with a shotgun right in front of the class. The students were just getting in. Then he started shooting. My wife was about 4 from the front, and everyone scrambled and screamed to get to the back. He got 5 or 6 in the front center, and one of the guys got hit straight in the face. He died instantly. She said there was blood everywhere. The teacher was a male brother and moved to get in the way and save the students. She said it happened so fast. Then the shooter moved out of the class, away from the teacher, and blew his head off in the hallway. She said that when he died, they left the classroom and had to step over his body. She slipped on some of the blood, and that his entire face was blown off. She doesn't like to talk about it much, but a few years ago, when we were watching a documentary about Columbine, she opened up. The guy that got killed was a friend, and a few of the students were badly wounded, but survived. One girl lost her eye, I think. She says the guy was a real loner, and raped and killed a girl right before the shooting. Some of the other guys apparently teased him pretty hard. Number 2. When I was in 7th grade, there was a new guy that came in. His name was Antonio. We were very good friends, and he was quite friendly with everyone. He was extremely charismatic. He had amazing drawing skills, with a very particular cartoony weird art style. And he wasn't edgy. He was just very anti-religion and liked guns. A lot. We'd play a lot of Xbox together, and the absolute only games he'd play would be shooters. Halo, Call of Duty, Medal of Honor, Sniper Elite. Those were all in his game roster. His dad was from Belgium, but we lived in Costa Rica. And their family did own a couple of guns, which is almost unheard of here. In 10th grade, I moved schools to one closer to my house. But my best friends, 1 guy and 3 girls, all stayed behind. So did my now wife, but we weren't dating at the moment. So I stayed in touch with most people from that school. Now the principal that we had was famed for being a massive bitch before she got to the school, and her arrival wasn't exactly welcome with open arms, but everyone put up with it in the end. My friend, however, was not very keen on her. There was a point in which Antonio started handing out bullets, or bullet casings, to people he deemed important. He gave these to my 4 best friends, and his recent ex-girlfriend and my now wife. He also had a habit of making a cut in his forearm and sucking out his own blood. The week we started school, he'd kept saying that Thursday was going to be the day, and this kept happening until said Thursday came. He got out of class and walked over to the principal's office. He spoke with her for a few minutes and then shot her in the head. He then ran to a field nearby where he had his backpack and was about to allegedly shoot himself, but he wasn't able to do it, so he just went back to the front of the school where he sat until police came for him. This was the first fatal school shooting in my country, and it was talked about for quite some time. She died 10 days later in hospital, and he was sentenced to 10 years in prison. It freaked me out when my mother mentioned that I was lucky I was not at that school anymore, since he openly discussed with the friends how he resented me because I had just started dating his ex-girlfriend. I never knew if this was true or not, but it makes me wonder. Had I have not transferred schools, had this one action in my life been different, would I be here today, or would I have been his second victim that day? I will never know, but I'm fortunate that I didn't have to find out. Number 3. This happened around 8 years ago. I didn't know the victim personally, but he was a bit of a loner. He came into my high school and shot himself midday. A lot of people who had been out there on the soccer field witnessed it. Immediately afterwards, we were terrified. I went to a really large school, and we practiced lockdown drills all the time, several times a month at least. We went into lockdown. They refused to tell us what was going on, and our phones didn't really help much because it was too early for the news stations to make any reports yet. We all thought that someone had been going around on a shooting spree in our school. It turns out that everyone else found out about it before we did, and we were locked in the classrooms for hours. My mum picked me up later that day crying. The news had reported that someone had been shot, but they weren't sure who it was, and I'm not sure my parents knew it was a suicide. There were ambulances and police cars covering the parking lot, and news helicopters flying overhead. We had a few days off school and eventually went back. They had blocked off the patio outside where he'd shot himself. It was connected to the cafeteria, and you could still see where the bloodstains were on the cement, even though it had been washed away. It was a very somber atmosphere. Lots of crying, lots of rumours. Some people said that he even had a bunch of magazines in his backpack, ready to shoot up the school. Some people say they saw him drop to the ground. It was very eye-opening. We had school assemblies and grief counselling for ages. They became much stricter and safety-wise, and started bringing police dogs out more often to sniff around the parking lot and lockers for evidence of gunpowder. Things got back to normal, but this really put things in perspective. I didn't know the guy, but this dude had friends, had family. People can be really good at hiding things. Be careful what you say to people. Don't be afraid to support someone or just offer a hug or an ear to someone who's feeling down. Who knows who's out there, suffering, depressed, or just needing a friend. I count myself lucky. I don't know what his intentions were that day, if he just thought he couldn't go through with the shooting and decided to take his own life instead. I still wish though that I could have made a difference in this poor kid's life. I'm sorry. Number 4. High school for me was extremely bad. It would have been fine if it were just slight name calling, or just being pushed around every so often, but it was a whole lot worse than that. Here is a little bit of background about my school. I live in an extremely popular tourist area with over 1 million tourists each year, with a local population of less than 10,000. My high school was considered outside the city limits and was considered a country school. The reason for this being that local business owners who didn't even live in the same state had to push back city limits to avoid the city taxes. And because it was considered a county high school, it lacked funding, with way too many students. Even in the last year, people still have to carry around books, not computers, to all their classes. And around 80% of the students came to my school from other schools because they had been kicked out and refused to take them back. A lot of them were convicted felons. This resulted in terrible students with teachers who are not paid enough to care and oftentimes did things that they really were not supposed to do. My sophomore year of high school was the worst. I got beaten up every day, people stole my things, and I was pushed around by everyone. I remember in a particular class, 2 kids pulled out knives and threatened to cut my throat. I told the teacher, who replied, I'll deal with it in a minute. I ended up having to run for my life and call the police. Other things that happened to me during the year included getting stabbed twice, being shot at once, ran over by a car, and pushed off a 2.5-story balcony, and people trying to beat me to death on 3 different occasions. They're all very serious, and I could go on, but I don't want to drag it out. I hope this gives you some perspective into just how awful this school was, with not a trace of caring about what happened to its pupils. As for the actual story, at the beginning of 11th grade, I met a guy called Aspin. Aspin was also picked on, just like me, along with 3 other kids nicknamed the Star Wars Kids. We were all picked on for no known reason. The 5 of us had sat together at lunchtimes for the past few months, and one day, Aspin says, "Wouldn't it be great if everyone here just died?" To which we all replied, yes, because we felt that a lot of these people deserved it for exactly how they had been treating us. We all began talking hypothetically and jokingly about what we would do to the school. But then Aspin took it further. He said he wanted to do a school shooting. We started off by making a list of people we wanted to keep alive, and then Aspin tells us that his father was an avid gun collector, and he had literally hundreds of guns at his disposal, all with ammunition. This started off as a joke, but escalated very quickly. The plan at first was to pull the fire alarm and wait till everybody went outside and then open fire. But we realised that there would be no way of saving the people on the list. After a long time planning, we discovered that we could quite easily lock all the doors from the outside within about 5 minutes, and this meant that it would keep the police out whilst we did what needed to be done. Setting free the good kids, killing everyone, and setting fire to the school. We had everything all set to go, but at the time there had been a lot of school shootings happening, and the school decided to add automatically locking doors to all the doors just in case there was a lockdown. After that, we needed to rethink our plan, which was taking so long the end of the year came before we could do anything. For me, 12th grade was the best half year of high school. It had been because by that time, so many people had realised how badly they'd been treating me. I feel like a lot of people started to grow up or stop being dicks, and lots of people apologised to me and expressed that they actually felt bad for what they did, and quite guilty. As this continued throughout the year, and people apologised for things that they had done, I started to feel better and forgive them. Aspin wanted to continue with the shooting, but me and a few of my friends really didn't want to anymore. So I wrote the principal a note telling him about our plan and telling him that Aspin was the ringleader, and a school shooting was avoided. Aspin got arrested, and me and the 3 other Star Wars kids got 3 weeks in ISS. We would have been expelled, but we were allowed to stay on the condition that we never tell anyone about our plan. I graduated high school, and I'm very glad that things ended the way they did, without violence. Hey guys, it's Mort here, and thank you so much for listening. This is certainly one of the darkest videos I've done. This topic required a lot of research, and from everything I've seen and read, I just want to say, if you're in a dark place, if you feel unhappy or that you're being harassed or bullied, lashing out to whatever extent is not the answer. Talk to someone. It helps a lot more than lashing out. If you do feel like lashing out though, you could always smash that like button for catharsis and subscribe, as you won't want to miss what I have in store for you next. And if you have had a creepy or paranormal experience that you wish to share, feel free to send it to my email, which you can find in the description. You can also follow me on Instagram and Twitter @TheMortisMedia for some secret stuff you won't find anywhere else. But anyway, for now guys, I'm gonna sign off. Stay awesome, and I'll see you in the next one.